started in a bit with the meat of the content. Anna and Sandister joined early, so they've been on for a while now, and got to see some of me and Nina figuring out and making sure we had all the logistics down. Hi, Allison from Western Mass. Tracy, Georgette, Cheryl. Hi, Georgette. Ooh, it's fun to look at all the people coming in. Is it Tamara? Tamara?
Tamara, hi.
Tamara. Hi, Tamara.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Let's see, Hillary from Jersey City. Ooh, Austria. Is it Christian? Stephanie from Columbus. Hi, I have a friend who moved to Columbus. Christian E. That is helpful, thank you. All right, we've got a nice little like range of people here. This is really exciting. No pressure, I suppose. Julia. Ooh. Also, I'll have links throughout the presentation, but if you notice in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll notice I have a link to a short URL that will take you to this presentation, so you'll be able to see everything. And yeah, that's a great way. And it is case sensitive, so the AF will need to be capitalized for you to actually get to the presentation. Hopefully my Wi-Fi won't be weird, and yeah. But if that happens, as it sometimes does on Zoom, then just work with me then. I will be back shortly. All right, I'll give them one more minute. As people are dropping names and things in here. There's a live streaming window covering the left side. Uh-oh. Let's see if that changes things. Now, can you all see the entire slide now? Awesome. Thank you for telling me. That would have been really awkward because I would have been, just going along with the slides and you all wouldn't have been able to see the majority of the stuff. That's my presenter window with my notes and things because I'm still learning Wikidata too. So thank you for working with me. Which could have gone really poorly. All right, so we're at 105. I think that's a good place to good time to start us off. Okay, so first, all right, so welcome. Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Again, I am Jason Oliver. I'm based in Houston, Texas, he, him pronouns, and I am one of the regional ambassadors for the South, for the United States South. So I support a lot of editathons throughout this region. So thank you all for joining us for this session on Wikidata. So I'll take you through the agenda quickly. So just starting off with the welcome. Yeah, and please keep the names, locations, pronouns coming. It's just nice to really see who and where everybody is. So we'll start off with some meeting norms. We'll go over what we mean when we talk about a brave, safe space. and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, which is these kind of guiding questions around Wikidata. So 1, what is it? 2, how do I add and extract data? My favorite part, what fun stuff can I do? And then, of course, how do we use it for editathons? Thinking about what this means for this current art and feminism campaign that's going on. So I guess to start off, are people familiar with Wikidata? Have people used it before? Feel free to kind of throw it in the chat if you have some familiarity, yes or no. Okay. Josie Pickens says yes. Josie Pickens is a friend of mine, unless there's another Josie Pickens who doesn't live in Houston with the same name. Okay, created my first item for a person last night. All right, Tamara. Okay, high achiever. Oh, overachiever here. I appreciate it. I might lean on you for some of your expertise. An editathon at Boston's ICA. Okay, wonderful. Oh, it is my Josie. Great. Okay. All right. So after we talk about what's going on in oh, Sean has done some queries. Fun. We're going to talk about Wikidata queries. That is a huge deal and can be really intimidating. So we'll definitely talk about Wikidata queries here. Okay, great. So going into questions and discussion, but I will be taking questions throughout. Feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll also be kind of stopping and pausing throughout to give people time to ask questions if you want to just speak them as well, and if you're not comfortable typing them in. So and then we'll wrap up. So I want to make sure to keep us on time. Okay, so meeting forms. First, please rename with your first name or your wiki name and pronouns. So I'll show, if you're not familiar with how to do that, I'll show you afterward. Try your best not to multitask. Please mute when you're not speaking. And then please hold questions to the end there'll be sections, so I'll make sure to add questions or just use the chat. And then we'll talk about these brave safe space norms. But here is how to change your name and add your pronouns in there, just so that we can make sure we're being respectful of folks. All right. So here's what we talk about when we talk about a brave safe space or a brave friendly space. The goal of this session is to create an encouraging space for collective learning. This requires intentional behavior wherein participants are conscious of and accountable for the effect of their statements and actions on others. We respect our experiences and the experiences of others and recognize that we can't do this work without one another. We agree to hold each other accountable to foster a brave, friendly space. So you can see the whole brave, friendly space agreement in the link that we have here. But this is just really important as we're trying to build community together and being in community with one another. That's a big part of what art and feminism is about. So I definitely want to bring that here into this room, this Zoom room, as we start our time together discussing Wikidata. All right, everybody ready? Okay, so we're gonna dive in. So Wikidata, here's the logo again. I mentioned it at the beginning, but but the presentation, all the slides you're gonna see are available at the link in the lower left-hand corner, bit.ly/Wikidata capital A, capital F. So you can always see these slides after the fact if I happen to go through anything too fast or anything like that. So starting, what is Wikidata? So like I mentioned, we'll have some guiding questions. First, what it is, how do I add and extract data? What fun stuff can I use it for? And then also, how do we use it for editathons? A lot of what I'm sharing here, I'm actually pulling from Amber's presentation. She's a Wikipedian in residence at Concordia. So I have a link in this presentation to her slides as well. You can see her full slide deck. That is really helpful. I've taken a lot of it because her slides were a lot neater than mine, and then modified and modified some things as well because some things have shifted over time. So, what is Wikidata? So, many of you are probably familiar with the suite of Wikimedia projects. Of course, we all know about Wikipedia. We probably have gone there today. And most of us are probably also familiar with the Commons, where we upload a lot of pictures and things. But there are all these different projects that are happening. And one of the newer ones, which was launched in 2012, is Wikidata. So the goal of this is to create a free knowledge base about the world that can be read and edited by humans and machines. So it's a huge database that's based on this open source database structure called Sparkle, SPARQL. You'll see that later on as we get into the query stuff. But it allows you to, it provides powerful searching, sorting, and querying tools to the data it contains, allowing for some interesting projects, visualizations, and data sets to be created and then used. So Wikidata is all about collaboration in the same way that Wikipedia is. It's a user-generated platform that the more we use it and contribute to it, the stronger it gets. And it's sometimes described as a backbone project, as the idea is that Wikidata is to become the repository for data points. In the future, Wikimedia projects will ping Wikidata for the data to fill in content. This is already happening in Wikipedia, where the info boxes on the side are now filled with data points directly called from Wikidata. It's also a really valuable tool in that if you don't have enough information for an entire Wikipedia page on its own, you can instead input the data into Wikidata, having it then there and available to provide linkages to other projects in the meantime. So this is really important. So I wanna say that again. You can use this as a place if you know there is an artist or a arts venue that you may not have that you know is as important, and you either don't have the time or like all the references and resources to create an entire Wikipedia page at this moment. It can be really a kind of placeholder, and a good way to start is to create a Wikidata page. So that's a great way of starting it off. So let's look at the structure of how this information is stored. So we're using this Douglas Adams page as Wikidata item as an exemplar, so we can see how the structure of Wikidata differs from Wikipedia. So it's primarily composed of items and statements. So items, items and statements. This is open linked data. So that means when you're looking at something like St. John's College, which you see on the screen, you can click on that and it'll take you to the item for St. John's College. And then you have statements which provide information through like structured linked data about these different items. So linked data means that you can find data easier than in traditional databases. You're able to make those connections between things far easier than you would be otherwise. Think about this as like, the same kind of click hole philosophy that defines Wikipedia. The goal is to make it so that people can just click through indefinitely to find different things. And it's very similar here on Wikidata. So statements are, so we have items, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then we have statements which are composed of properties and values. So to go over these two pieces. So first, items, people, places, and things, right? So, your nouns. And then we have unique identifiers. So they all start with a Q. And there are, let's see, I'm trying to remember, I want to say 80 million. I have it on my slides. Yeah, 80 million items, and then 8,000 different properties. So that we use to describe these items. So items can be almost anything, and they can represent, but are not limited to, artists, scholarly articles, books, editions of books, places in the world, organizations, people, institutions, and so on. And they all start with a Q. So you can see some examples of different items in Wikidata: a university, Concordia University, library, computers, Wikipedia, and so on. So statements are where we store the information about items and are composed of properties and values. Properties are predetermined vocabulary to define relationships and are assigned unique identifiers, just like we have with the items, except now they start with a P. So the examples of properties we have: date of birth, instance of, blood type, you have an image, and so on. So we have all these different values, which are the answer to properties for the most part. And they can also be predetermined in that, like, dates are controlled, and Wikipedia will warn you, or Wikidata will warn you if your logic doesn't make sense. So it'll warn you if, like, you have a URL in there, but it's supposed to be a date of birth, right? Those things don't match up. So those are some of the nice things about Wikidata. So now we're going to take a look at a Wikipedia page and then compare it to a Wikidata item. So right now you see an artist, Elizabeth Catlett. And as you're probably familiar, so Wikipedia has a left-hand navigation bar, a top navigation bar for when you're logged in, and then you'll see a title to the page, index and info box on the right side. Search, so when you're searching using that search bar in the upper right, it'll bring up Wikipedia articles. So now, what's also convenient is on the page, and it actually doesn't show up here, but on any Wikipedia page, if you scroll down on the left, you'll be able to see under this tools section, you'll be able to see a link to the Wikidata item as well. So now I'm going to take you to the Wikidata item for Elizabeth Catlett. So you see it looks completely different. So here it tells you a little bit, just a little bit about her, but it's really telling you, okay, she's a human, she is female, right? She's a Mexican citizen, and then it shows you links to the different Wikipedia entries and the various languages that it's in. So just an example of how it looks differently in Wikipedia versus Wikidata. So you can see how it's a lot easier to add an entry and say, okay, yes, this person's a human, and then add and you don't need references for everything, but for some things like country of citizenship is something that isn't readily obvious, right? So you would need a reference for that. So, okay. How to see these different properties. How to see these different items and properties. So the items begin with a Q. So you see right next to Elizabeth Catlett's name, you see the letter Q. Also, when you hover over some of the items, you'll see, when you hover over an item, you'll also be shown the item number. So we can see that human is Q5, whereas when we look at properties, we can also see that when we hover over those, for example, the instance of property is P31. So these all have very specific identifiers that we can tell the individual, tell what each of these things are. Okay, I know I'm pushing through. We're going to take a break in just a moment. But some important things to know here. So in the same way that Wikipedia works, it's not proprietary, licensed under Creative Commons license to allow third-party users to freely reuse the data, available with no restrictions. So a lot of the same stuff that you can, that you already know about for Wikipedia. Not all knowledge is included, so it does have policies on living people, and it also does have notability criteria. Do not edit Wikidata in your own interest. So here's a thing to note that's different from what's happening with with Wikipedia. So of course, on Wikipedia, you should not edit your own Wikipedia page. That's not the case with your own Wikidata page. You can edit your own Wikidata page. So that's this kind of conflict of interest thing. As long as you are making edits in good faith, that's really important, and you're providing references, then you can certainly create your own Wikidata page or one for your friend or colleague or something. So that's important. No paid edits or so on. And it might be helpful to identify and highlight like conflicts of interest if you're doing it, say, on behalf of an institution. But yeah, just kind of pay attention to some of these pieces. But the point about you being able to edit your own Wikidata item, I think, is something that's really important to note. Okay, notable data. So the criteria here, we're looking at 3 rules. It must be able to link to another Wikimedia project, or it can be described using serious and publicly available references, or it makes statements made in other Wikidata items more useful, right? So this might be a book or an edition of a book, right? So that's really important. You don't need to rely on scholarly sources. You can link to other Wikimedia projects. So you can use, say, like if it's already cited and mentioned in a Wikipedia page, then you can refer to the Wikipedia page. And if it provides a structural need, right? Like if you need it to, if it meets a structural need, then it should be included, right? It makes the structure of Wikidata more coherent. It makes this repository flow better. References are still best and should be used whenever making a claim which is not common knowledge. Okay, so what can we do with Wikidata? So I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions before. So we started with just what is Wikidata overall, and next I'm going to go through like how do we contribute and update. So creating and updating items, and then going into like how do we extract and query data. But are there any questions so far? How are people doing?
I don't have any questions for now.
Okay. All right, awesome. I know this is intense, but we're talking about a database, so so it can be a little tricky. Wikipedia, is LinkedIn considered a serious reference? I don't. So you can put a URL as a reference, and so I would imagine for something like and then you can also put the date where it's retrieved. So my guess, this is not me speaking on behalf of like Wikimedia or Wikidata, but my guess is for depending on like what it is, then you can add in information maybe about employment or something and say like this was retrieved from the LinkedIn account on a specific date, and that would be a way to cite it. So I can see it being used in that way, but not as but no, not everyone who has a LinkedIn page should be able to also have their own Wikidata item. Does that distinction make sense? Cool. Okay, so first, how do we add data, right? And again, a reminder, you can get all these slides. The link is in the bottom left-hand corner to see the slides after the fact. So we've talked about this structure, right? Items and statements. It's really straightforward to create a new item. You can do this manually. We'll also talk briefly about how you can mass create new items, but for the most part, I think people will be comfortable, particularly during editathons or something, to create a new item. So it's on the left-hand navigation, and it'll bring up this form. You just fill in the language, description, aliases, and label of the item, and hit create. So the alias piece is actually, I think, something that's important and really useful, because you have particularly some artists who might go by their full name, or they might have different names that they might use, right? So, or if it's a venue, you might have an acronym that it's used, right? So if you're thinking about the Houston Museum of African American Culture, also goes by HMAC. So that's an example where you would want to have those aliases in there. Or artists might have their full middle name or their abbreviated middle name. So these are the types of things that you would include in aliases, and it's really, really helpful. Under statements, you'll see, so you should see plus add statement. So you can click on that, and then you'll be able to add in the property as well as the reference. So pretty straightforward there. So it brings up a new box, you add in the property. You can either type it in, right? So you can say something like place of residence or date of birth, or you can just enter the property number if you happen to, once you become a Wikidata expert, and the value will appear. And you will be unable to publish the statement if the value field is empty. So once you want to enter a property, you have to actually put a value in there. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to add the date of birth statement and then not put anything about their date of birth. You can also add in references at this point, but those are not required to publish a statement to the item. At any point, you can edit your statements or remove them entirely. So I'm not going to talk about this here because it takes, I think, a bit more time to get into, but there are many, many Wikidata tools that are super useful. And so one tool that allows for bulk uploads or bulk edits is Quick Statements, which allows you to make mass edits, and it can be really useful, but it can also like screw up Wikidata if you do it wrong. So not something that I want to try and go over briefly, but it absolutely is something that is there. Oh, and in the same way that we have organizations like Art and Feminism that are working to improve Wikipedia, you also have groups that are working to improve Wikidata, so that are focused on adding in for example, like arts venues and things, so that those we can have a solid database of those in Wikidata. So you have a lot of Wikidata projects, and I have a link in the slides that you can go to where you'll be able to see some of the different projects happening. Okay, how do I extract data? So queries. Queries are super important. One of the people who was on mentioned that they have a little bit of experience with querying. And so this is really the powerhouse of Wikidata. It makes the data found within the repository stronger. We can query or search for things and find correlations, and then we can examine the data. Queries on Wikidata are completed by Sparkle, S-P-A-R-Q-L, which is an open source query language similar to SQL. The best way that I would recommend is finding queries and modifying them, because otherwise it's really hard to create them from scratch. So I'll show you in a bit, and we'll have some time to try modifying your own query and playing around with it, modifying a query that I made to create your own tool list. So if you look at the Wikidata query service, actually, I'm showing you this here, but I'm not going to get into it because I showed you the link in this last slide. So query.wikidata.org, but that's not actually my favorite tool to use because I will show you one that's a little more user-friendly. But one of the reasons why I really like queries are because you can generate task lists. So it's an easy way to search for, so this is a list generated that looks at all of the artists, visual artists who are women and on the Black Lunch Table task list. So it's generated automatically. This is actually in Wikipedia on the, under like Black Lunch Table. And so it's automatically updated each day. So it's really, really useful there. Art and Feminism's list is super long. So you definitely want to look at ways to pare it down. So to give you an example, here's a Wikidata query builder that I think is a lot easier. You can see next to, so it says create lists of items by filtering them based on their statements. Next to that, you see examples. Those examples, and actually the ones in, I'll go back. And actually, if you see in this Wikidata query service, it says examples next to Wikidata query service. Starting there in editing is a much better idea than trying to build it from scratch, unless you're like a really experienced database person. Okay, so no code queries. If coding isn't your thing and you just want to search, then here is an example. The Wikidata query builder is super useful. So you can search for on focus list of Wikimedia project and put in something like art and feminism. And then I wanted, because I live in Houston, to pare it down and look at, and also because the art and feminism list is really long, to cut it down just to entries that are in Houston. So place of birth, I put Houston. And you can see I got these 5 entries that are in Houston. And there are some really convenient tools that you can play around with. So if you look on the left, you'll see table, graph builder, tree, dimensions, graph. So there are all these different visualizations that are built into this. They're also built into the normal Wikidata query tool. And these can also be exported. You can provide a link to them. If you look on the right, you'll see, yeah, they can be like downloaded as a CSV or as a HTML page or anything like that. Or you can make a short URL just by clicking that link, and you'll be able to share this with anyone. So now we're gonna try to create our own query. So I want you to go to bit.ly/HOU query, all lowercase. I'm gonna type it into the chat as well, to go to this query that I made, the one that you just saw, and it'll take you to the Wikidata query builder. And I want you to replace the specific item Houston with your own city. And then click show results. And I want you to put the number of results in the chat. Oh no, a 0. Okay, see, this is really good to know though. In your defense, I live in Houston, which is the 4th largest city in America, and I only had 4. So just something to know. Or no, I had 5, sorry. Chicago has 5. All right, so we're matched up against Chicago. Well, we're supposed to overtake you all in terms of being the largest city in the, or 3rd largest city soon as well. So. Montreal has 30. All right, Montreal. Wow. Stratford, Canada has 5, which seems small compared to Montreal, but that's as many as Houston and Chicago. So yeah. Seattle has 15. So actually, I think it might not show the results number in the Wikidata query builder. I think you'll have to count, but for the most part, the numbers won't be huge. Let me check and see. Does it tell you the number of results? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think it has the number of results in here. If it's too many to count, then you won. Oh, it's under query options. Sorry, I've been playing with so many of the different tools. Oh, it's also possible. I put, oh, I think because I had entered 30 in mine before I tried to make it show all results, it might stop you at 30. So yeah, New York is winning at 30. 30 plus, which makes sense, right? You'd expect, yeah, I think I set the limit for 30, but you can you all see my screen right now? Can you see the query screen right now? Yes? Okay, yes. So I had set it to show only like 30 results, I think, at first, instead of showing all the results. So when I sent it to you all, I think it might have left it at the 30 max. So yeah, I probably screwed up, but I didn't want Houston to lose, so I may have stacked the deck in our favor. But this doesn't mean that there are only 5 artists in the list that are from Houston. It might just mean that many artists don't have the place of birth listed as Houston in their, ooh, okay, 135 results for New York. All right, way to show off. So, but yeah, it means a lot of these artists probably don't have the place of birth actually listed. So these are the types of things that we can focus on in Wikidata to make sure to edit. All right, cool. So what fun stuff can I do? So now we've gone over the beginning. Actually, I'm gonna go back. So no, I won't. So yeah, because we're at 40 minutes. So all right, what fun stuff can I do? We talked about queries, but there are tools. So there are tools that you can add to your Wikidata that will allow you, tools that you can add to your Wikidata that will make it easier to edit things. The first one that I really like is Recoil. So if you can see on the right, looking at the Judy Chicago Wikidata item, at the top, it creates a drop-down list of the most relevant properties which are absent from it. So it shows you, all right, Judy Chicago is missing family name, work location, writing language, and so on from her profile. So it gives you an idea of what are some of the things you can focus on editing, and it tells you the property IDs. So and it shows you exactly how to type them in. So that's really helpful. And also the second is display Wikidata info on sister projects. So I had mentioned on Wikipedia before, if you look on the left kind of panel of links, you'll see the link to the Wikidata item for that page. But this second tool just creates a link at the top that can take you to the Wikidata page, and that's just really convenient for me if I want to go and edit that instead of focusing on like editing narrative in the Wikipedia page. So those are two of my favorite tools, but I left a link in the box or in the comments here. And so there are a ton of tools with different things. Like you can merge pages, and that's useful because sometimes people might create multiple Wikidata items for different pages. So there's a tool to like merge pages. So we talked about, queries. Also, visualizations are really useful. So we have a few different ways that queries can be displayed. They can be shown as just like charts like we did before, but they can also be graphs. So you can graph them or create full websites that are powered through queries. So there are many tools that are used to generate like visualizations of the data. People have made timelines and things, like it's really, really convenient. Here, you can see this allows you to explore the gender gap in Wikimedia projects. As of December 2nd, 2019, only 18.1% of biographies in the English Wikipedia are about women, right? That's the cool kind of stuff that can happen by having all this data tracked in Wikidata. And there's a link to the different tools where for visualizations that you can play with. And then here, just an example of a query output that shows just the impact of contributing to query to Wikidata. So this is just showing some of the different edits that took place in various countries. Yeah, just really cool. So next, editathons, and then I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly because there's not really more to learn, but first, Wikidata edits can be tracked. So just like your Wikipedia edits, Wikidata edits can be tracked. If you look at the dashboard, you can add it into tracked wikis. Also like wiki quotes and Wiktionary and things, like you can add those if you wanted to edit those as well. I want to pay more attention to wiki quotes. That's something that I've been curious about, but I don't want to get into that now. Ideas for editathon. So some ideas for like ways to use this. One, generate a task list like we did today. Two, add statements, properties, and references to items. So just generally, editing Wikidata items. Create items for artists, prominent works, or cultural venues. That's a link to one of the Wikidata projects around cultural venues that meet Wikidata's less stringent notability requirements. 4, create items for books along with separate items for editions. So like the first edition for a book will have a different Wikidata item. So there's the item for the book as a whole, and then there would be an item for each edition. So that's just something that is also really useful for books that you might need to use as references, particularly if those references are useful for women artists. And then add works acquired by prominent museums or indexed by prominent publications. So that is also something that is really useful. I put a link to some of the different publications that if they are like included in MoMA or something, then that is something that can be linked to in Wikidata. So, or if it's been indexed in a certain like arts index or whatever. Yeah, those are some of the things to talk about. And I have more on that in the comments or in the notes for this. And then some general tools. So yeah, there are tours that will take you through Wikidata. They're really easy and simple, and the like FAQ and then the contents are super helpful in explaining how Wikidata works. There's also a one-pager that kind of takes you through the ins and outs of Wikidata. But yeah, that is, and then some stuff on like how to do mass edits, and then writing Wikidata queries, which like I said, can be a little bit of a challenge, but once you learn it, can also be really useful. All right, questions and discussion. Yay, 145, perfect. All right, what are any kind of questions so far? Are people thinking that this might be useful? Generating task lists. So just like everybody went through, sure. So just like everybody went through and created this query through the query builder, for like their own city, you could search for, actually, I'm just going to remove, I have a bunch of stuff here. I'm just gonna remove that. And only, so if we want to generate a task list for the, for art and feminism. So here I'm running a query. And this might take a little while, but okay, here we go. So if I wanted to generate a task list just on like all the different art and feminism, yeah, if I want to generate a task list on like with all the different art and feminism items, then this would be super useful. This is a really useful tool for doing that. Or if you wanted to filter it, say if you're in an institution or something, that's a convenient way if you get comfortable with some of the different properties and you know, hey, I want to look at everybody who studied at the University of Houston, and I only want to focus on people who came through, or perhaps people who came through this particular artist residency. That might be a good way to create a task list. Does that answer your question? That's what I mean by these query builders. You can just share, through that. Let me see. Do you know of any projects or tools that are being used by social scientists for research? So there are like, what is it, Histropedia? So like Histropedia, can everybody see my screen right now? Yeah, Histropedia has, where's the example tour? Timeline of everything, no. Famous artists, there we go. Darn it. So yes, there are plenty of tools, and if you go in the slides, you'll be able to see this is just one of them that that exists, and it's a timeline that shows, you know, famous artists. I struggled with finding photos of artists' works. If they're on a publication's newspaper site, can they be linked? Oh, okay. So I forgot to mention this, but you can also create Wikidata items. Thank you for this question, Pete. Wikidata items for like prominent works as well. That is one of the reasons why I talked about, you know, creating Wikidata items for like indexes or museum collections and things, because that can be super useful. So if they're on a publication's newspaper or site, can they be linked? I'm not completely sure I understand your question, because they might still need to be uploaded to the Commons, right? If you're going to use them, and you'd have to have the same permissions that you would have to upload pictures for the Commons normally. I'm not completely sure if I answered your question, but yeah. Is there a kind of master list of queries, or query statements, properties? So yes, there is a master list of properties. I think there are about 8,000 of them. There's a way to search. I will put that in the notes for yeah, I'll put that in the notes for my slides and make sure that's available. As far as queries, I don't know if there's a master list of queries, but those examples, they serve a lot of different use cases. So like here, I'm gonna click and show a list of female mayors, right? So here, it shows you how it's set up. So instance of city, so it's showing you all the cities that have a head of government with who is female. And then it's gonna run the query, and it'll show you all of those cities that have a female mayor, and it's showing you their name and then the population and so on. So those examples are super useful. Recoil, going back. So you just go to the tools and then you have to activate it. No problem, Tracy. Thanks for coming. You just have to activate it. So you'll literally just click activate, and then I think it makes you copy and paste into a page, but it provides you a link to that page where you have to paste it. But it's 2 steps, and then you'll be able to see this recoin, like most relevant properties which are absent that are there. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay. Did I answer? Is there anybody who needs more clarity on the questions? Yeah, feel free to expound. So I actually don't think that I don't think that's a problem at all in Wikidata. So talking about, Anna asked a question about conflict of interest. I don't think that's a problem at all. Just for if you're putting in general information about what city is this place in, or like, what do you call that? Latitude and longitude, so location data, or general information about the website, what the website is for the organization. It's a little more difficult to have the same like bias that you would have on Wikipedia. So you absolutely can do that. The recommendation that I've seen is to just mention that on the talk page, but it doesn't mean that you can't. It doesn't mean that you can't. Oh, let's see. And Anna, let me know if I didn't answer that. Okay, perfect. Allison, if you're making a task list, do you manually take the query you just ran and build a table on, say, a project page, or is there an easier way to export? So yes, you can. Actually, what you saw on Black Lunch Table. I'm gonna go back. Where'd it go? Task list. So this is this like Black Lunch Table task list, and Black Lunch Table has generated a bunch of them. They're on Wikipedia on pages, and they're generated automatically. So, but I think the easiest way is just to create a link. So in all of the different query tools, you'll see you can create a link to the query, or you can download it in any of these different formats. So CSV, of course, being the most popular, but you can download it in these different formats and easily share it. Does that answer your question, Allison? And so actually, I'll show you what the link looks like. So here, so I created a link. So the link just looks like this. And it generates, so you can share that short link that you saw, PTR, right? w.wiki/P_T_r, and it takes you to the entire Wikidata query. So super easy to share. And all the different query tools have this kind of functionality where you can share a link to the query. Other questions? Yeah, and the edits will show up in the dashboard, just like Wikipedia edits are, as long as you have it down to be tracked. Anything else? For everybody's reference, can you elaborate on the interaction with Wikipedia? So for the info boxes, some of the information I think is pulled from Wikidata. And then if you look at, I'm going to go back. yeah, some information can be pulled back and forth between Wikidata and Wikipedia. So that is useful. I also just think if we can make it normalize people fleshing out these Wikidata pages, then it can provide, it can make it easier for people to just get started editing Wikipedia generally. So you can take what's in the Wikidata page and then add it into Wikipedia. But what also is useful is making these connections between the, so you see this like also known as section. How do I do a laser pointer? Oh well. Yeah, you see this like also known as or alias section here. So where it says Elizabeth Catlett Mora. So when you're searching, when people are searching for venues with different names or artists that may go by multiple names or their middle name or, you know, a maiden name versus their married name or something, then, or just different names throughout their career, right? Then that is, this kind of stuff is helpful in how Wikipedia knows to redirect. And then over on the right, you can see under Wikipedia, you can see all the different languages where there is an Elizabeth Catlett page. So EN here, you can see is the English Wikipedia, ES being the Spanish, and you have all these different other pages, but it can give you, for those of you who might be doing edits in other countries, this can also be super useful to create entries to say, oh, okay, there's no, what's an example? There's no page in Spanish, right? There is for this, but there's no page in Spanish. So let me create an Elizabeth Catlett page in Spanish. So that for this artist, like that's super useful for those of you who might be having editathons in a language that isn't English. Did I answer your question, Cheryl? Awesome, thank you all. Okay, wonderful. All right. Okay, so, yay. All right. Fun stuff, editathons. Okay, so continuing the conversation. So you can reach out to Art and Feminism, or if you have questions for me, you can email me directly. And then follow Art and Feminism on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And also in our Slack groups, we have, of course, the general one in online editing, but also one for COVID-19. So please make sure to stay connected in our Slack. And I think that might be my last slide. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate all the engagement and everybody, you know, yeah, having fun. So hopefully this is useful. Play around with Wikidata. It's super fun and like there's so much to explore there. So I really want, yeah, I just want this to be useful. All right, thanks everybody. Nina, is there anything else, anything that you want to say on behalf of Art and Feminism?
No, that's it. Thank you all for joining us. The recording will be on the Commons as soon as I send it over to Mohammed. So if you want to reference it, it'll be there. And we'll send you all a link to it too.
All right. So again, yeah, the link to the slides is in the, you'll see in the recording. Thank you all for coming and have a great day. Stay safe, please, and stay inside.